You win! Perfect!
Now that the fashionably late update has been out for a bit, people in the Die of Death community have been wondering when the next update will come, which is a pretty valid concern considering how long we had to wait for this update alone. It took almost an entire year for the fashionably late update to come out, which is understandable considering the size of the update, but it was still a really long waiting period. In my personal opinion, this update was pretty much worth the wait, but it still took way too long. So being concerned about when the next update is going to be released is honestly really understandable. People are generally uneasy, especially since this one update had one of the longest waiting periods in Roblox ASIM history. Thankfully, just a few days ago, the Die of Death team put out a teaser showcasing what's going to be in the next update. This is great news because it means that they're already working on the next update, which is obviously to be expected, but it's still exciting nonetheless. 3 major things were showcased in this teaser, those being a giant worm, an entity in the fog, and a giant lightning strike. I'm most certain that the giant worm and the entity in the fog are both new special game modes adjacent to something like Evil Scary. This is interesting because Evil Scary is truly a unique special game mode and no other special game mode in the game is like it. So as long as they're executed well, I'm fine with these additions. The lightning strike, on the other hand, appears to be some kind of map gimmick. I already covered my opinion on the current state of map gimmicks in a previous video, so hopefully this map gimmick will actually be relevant and not pushed to the side like other map gimmicks currently. To me, this seems like it will be almost way too similar to the falling teapots on Teapot Paradise, but we'll just have to wait and see because I could be entirely wrong. All of these things showcased in this teaser do look pretty promising, especially the giant worm and the entity in the fog. But looking at this teaser reminded me of something. It's the fact that the update right after this is supposed to add 2 new killers into the game. I am beyond excited for this update specifically because the last killer we got was Harkin, and that was over a year ago. This game desperately needs another killer added to its roster, and I know that a majority of the killers got reworked with the fashionably late update, but at the end of the day, they're still the same killers, even if their reworks made them a lot more interesting. I hate to say this, but my excitement for these 2 killers kind of overshadows my excitement for this next update. Killer gameplay, even if it's a lot more fair for the killer now, has been pretty dry considering it's been so long since we've gotten a new killer. Killers obviously make the game go around because this entire genre is focused around the killers. Adding a new killer into the roster would freshen up the gameplay loop by an unimaginable amount. Killer-oriented updates garner the most amount of attention out of any other kind of update, and it isn't close. Regardless, there's something that needs to be addressed, and that's the fact that both of these killers are going to be released at the same time with one update. This may seem obvious and like it's not a huge deal, but the problem is that this is really similar to a major mistake that developers made while they were making the fashionably late update. While an update that adds 2 completely new killers does seem very substantial and refreshing, it would take a ridiculous amount of time. As we've seen many times in the past, developing an entirely new killer takes quite a bit of time. The most extreme example I can think of is Noli from Forsaken. Noli is really infamous for taking a ridiculous amount of time to release. It took somewhere around 8 months for Noli to be fully developed, and that's mainly because the developers were not only not the brightest individuals out there, to put it nicely, but it's also because developing a killer takes a lot of time. Sure, Noli did undergo a lot of reworks during his development, but that still doesn't change the fact that developing a new killer takes a good amount of time. How does this relate to the fashionably late update? Well, a major issue that I and many others pointed out during the development of the update was the sheer size of it. The fashionably late update was obviously the biggest update in the history of Die of Death, but it didn't exactly have to be that way. As I suggested in my video regarding this update before it came out, they could have split up different different parts of that update and release them separately. They could have released the quality of life changes, then the new abilities, and then everything else, but that's just what I suggested. It was obviously too late by the time I made that video because the update was going to release in only a few months after I made it, and a lot of the update had already been developed at that point, but the argument I made still stands, especially for this update that's going to add 2 new killers. A lot of ASIMs only add 1 killer at a time for pretty obvious reasons, and I just don't think it's the best idea to release both of these killers at the same time when they could be released separately and they would get just as much attention as they would if they were released at the same time, and perhaps they could get even more attention if they were released separately. I just don't want another fashionably late situation where we have to wait over half of a year just to get new content, because that content drought during the waiting period of the fashionably late update was miserable. I desperately wanted to make videos on this game during that time period, but I simply couldn't because there wasn't anything to talk about. Sure, I did make 2 videos a few months before the update came out, but those were the only 2 topics that I thought were actually relevant at the time. All in all, I am confident in the Die of Death developers, especially since I viewed the fashionably late update as the main roadblock for them, but I am worried for a pretty valid reason. I don't think we'll have to deal with another waiting period as long as the one for the fashionably late update was, but I do have my concerns, especially since this is a really easy fix. Releasing these 2 killers separately would do wonders for the game, especially since, like I said, we haven't gotten a new killer since over a whole year ago. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.